You know, I'm going to give you a history lesson.
We got some dumbass motherfuckers floating around this country.
Stop laughing! And when I do, start.
Also, y'all did some nasty-ass jokes on my ass, too.
Funny jokes and unfunny jokes come out of the same birth.
You f***ing guys are unbelievable.
Why are you laughing?
Evening, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Why You Laughing, a history of comedy podcast. And today, I am pleased to introduce to you Karl Pilkington, the mystery of the great Karl Pilkington. Another episode that people have heavily requested since we started doing the program. And kind of a, like we've talked about, we've done Bobo from the Opie and Anthony show. We've talked about eventually we'll do Howard Stern, Whack Packers. I guess in a way we did with Stuttering John. And this is kind of the same, in the same vein, where Karl Pilkington is sort of a Ricky Gervais whack packer. But he became like this legend among Ricky's fans and fans of that podcast. There's a lot of interesting details that go into the legend of Karl Pilkington. And the real discussion I think that we're ultimately having today is Karl Pilkington a genius? And Ricky certainly has his answer. But there's a lot of people that think Karl is definitely a very profound and interesting guy. And we will kind of dissect today what makes Karl Pilkington tick. And he's a weird guy. He's a comedy legend who does not necessarily like the spotlight and never had any intention of being and he wasn't a comedian in any way, really. Yet he does somehow fit this episode, or fit the criteria to do an episode on here. So, very interesting character. Also, I think the first time we've ever covered someone not from North America. I'm pretty sure, which is kind of crazy, 200 episodes in. But people have always been like, hey, will you cover any British comedians and stuff? And I guess this is how we start, is Karl Pilkington. So,
well, do you count the one we just did with Seinfeld, Gervais?
No, yeah, I guess Ricky was in that, technically. And Jim Jeffries, we've talked about in episodes. But this is the first central figure of an episode, I guess.
Yeah, I'm surprised we haven't done Jim Jeffries yet. That's like the obvious one, I think.
Or like Monty Python or any of that stuff. Yeah, which we will do eventually. But I figured let's get to Karl Pilkington first because so many people have been interested in kind of a deep dive into him, which we will do today. And if you like more of Why You Laughing, if you want to go through all our past episodes and see what you've missed, see if there's any subjects that interest you, we are on Spotify, YouTube, and all other podcast platforms. So like, subscribe, comment. It helps the show, helps more people find us. We appreciate you guys doing that and engaging with the program. And blindmike.net is the easiest place to find all those links. And if you want to become a member, you can do that on YouTube. If you're watching, you can do that right here on YouTube and get early access. Or you can also go to Patreon and become a Patreon member. That's where most people are. And it's also better for Why You Laughing because sometimes our episodes get taken down for copyright. But Patreon, you always get it. So consider becoming a member on Patreon. You get early access and bonus content. So we appreciate you guys checking that out and supporting the show however you see fit. blindmike.net. Thank you guys for doing that. And let's dive in to Karl Pilkington. So I don't know if a lot of people know this because Ricky got so huge after the success of The Office and then the many other shows he did after that and then hosting the Golden Globes. He became this massive figure in comedy. And now people know him as a stand-up, but he came from meager beginnings. He was a radio guy, which is pretty weird. As far in terms of comedy legends, which Ricky certainly is now, you don't hear a lot of guys getting their start in radio, which is a little surprising. It feels like a lot of radio guys, once they have success in radio, maybe get set in their ways there. But Anthony Cumia is another guy, like comedians would always compliment him for being genuinely funny, not just radio funny, you know? And surprised more people don't come out of that radio world. Carlin was another, started as a radio guy as well. But I'm surprised how few people start like that.
Anthony did try, and it didn't go well.
Well, you know, listen, go to he's a fan of the show, Craig. Go to Compound Live. I'm sure it's a great time.
No. I'm talking about his stand-up. His stand-up.
No, I know. But as far as Ricky goes, he started at a place called XFM in over there across the pond, and he met a man named Stephen Merchant, who became an assistant of his, and they started working together in radio, and then they inevitably got fired from that radio station, and then they went off to write The Office, and The Office became a big hit over there, and obviously we'll get to the success of The Office as well. But then they come back to radio after they write. Another weird thing that you don't see a lot. I feel like once guys are out of radio, they're out. But they came back to radio after making The Office, and that's where our story begins with Karl Pilkington. So this is Karl's version of how he met these two gentlemen.
When Ricky came back to XFM, it used to be Claire Sturgis, who would just press the buttons, and they hired Ricky and Stephen.
Yeah.
I remember the first couple of weeks it was then, and then Claire was she off sick or on holiday for 2 weeks?
I don't know. All I remember is having a meeting with the boss at the time saying it's your turn to work with the new presenters who come in. That's how it works, isn't it?
Yeah.
You get lumbered with, you're sort of on a shift pattern, and you get a new presenter and they need someone for a bit. And Andrew was the boss at the time. He just said, right, you've got to work with Ricky and Steve.
And were you a fan of the show?
I remember listening to him when I first came to London. And I thought, oh, they're a nightmare. I'm just trying to work with them. And then it's like, oh, hello, how are you doing? And I had to work with them, and they came in, and it was me against two. It's not that bad if it's one of you.
So Karl is a very blunt guy. That's how he talks about everything all the time. And I think a lot of people who want to make controversy out of the things Karl says will be like, oh, see, Karl hates Ricky and Steven. I don't take that as their relationship. That's how he kind of talks about everything. I believe it was before Ricky and Steven showed up at the radio station. There's a story about a woman. I believe her name is Gail Porter. I hope I'm getting that right. But I guess she was kind of a big deal over there in London. She came to the station to do her first radio show. And after an exchange with Karl, left the studio crying. I think she asked him how it went, and he very bluntly just said, "Well, it's not going to win any awards, But in his mind, that's it's like, hey, there's room for improvement. Like that's his version of being supportive in this weird way. So Karl, unlike a lot of I mentioned him in terms of like being a whack packer for Ricky Gervais. On that scale, Karl is definitely not an idiot. I think he's an oddly bright guy. He's very simple, I think might be the way to describe him. And I don't necessarily mean that the way it's usually used. He looks at life very simply. That's how he internalizes it, and that's how he filters it back out. Like you just kind of get exactly what he's thinking at all times. It's a very interesting mind. He's not a dumb guy by any means. There are things that maybe go over his head or he can't quite understand. But like I said, I think that's because he looks at the world very simplistically and is like, why can't everything be like that? And obviously Ricky and Steven, having good radio instincts, found that to be something to play off of.
And here's the first Karl story.
Yeah, so this is Stephen Merchant telling his version of how they found Karl Pilkington.
I think with Karl, it was, for those that don't know, we did this radio show, as I mentioned, Ricky and I. And, if you've been listening since the beginning of the podcast, you'll recall when we last left our heroes, they'd been fired from that radio station. Well, after the success of our TV stuff, they invited us back and we returned as the conquering heroes, and we hosted a radio show. And that was where we were given a man to produce and press the buttons. And that guy was Karl Pilkington. And Karl, we thought, was just a guy, just a tech guy and a producer guy. And we started asking him questions on air, and lo and behold, it was a goldmine of brilliance. And I think my fondest memory is the first moment we were talking about something on the air, and Karl was telling a story, and he said, blah, 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 and the next door neighbors who kept a horse in their house. Anyway, they'd gone away for the weekend, and we were like, "Whoa, what?
They kept a horse
in the house?" And he's like, "Yeah." Anyway, and he didn't realize that was the interesting part of the story. He just thought that was a bit of
that's not a big deal.
That's not a big deal. And then we pursued whatever avenue that was, and we found out about this crazy family with a horse in the house. And I think that was when we're like, "Oh, this guy's just incredible."
Do you keep it?
It's not dumb. It's like they want to find out about the horse, and in his mind, he's like, "Well, that's not the part I'm telling you about. You know what I mean? Like, that's not the interesting part to him for some reason. It's not dumb. I don't know the other word for it. Leave in the comments what the correct word to define Karl Pilkington, but he's certainly not a dumb guy. He's just incredibly unique and has a different way of thinking. So Ricky was the head of speech at the radio station. I don't understand what any of our UK listeners or viewers, if you want to tell me what that title means, is it like the program director?
That's what it sounds like.
Yeah, I didn't really understand it because what's interesting is I would think just hearing that, I'm like, maybe it just means he's the biggest personality there. But this show, the Ricky Gervais show, was only on Saturdays. It was on one day a week for a couple of hours, and they would play music. That's what's crazy about this. Is you would think if you have a name like Ricky Gervais, you'd try and get him to be like, Afternoon Drive or something. That's just how, at least in America, that's how we would have assumed Ricky's show was. But it wasn't that at all. And so Karl kind of parlayed this too. And like I said, it's similar to Howard Stern or Opie and Anthony. That's in that the ball busting, particularly of Karl, was similar. It was that environment, like you were hanging out with your friends. Like Karl came in to do the Ricky Gervais show on Saturdays for 2 hours or whatever it was. And he parlayed that into getting Mondays off. He's like, well, if I'm working Saturdays, I get Mondays off. And Ricky would just bust his balls like, you get an entire day off because you come in and goof around for 2 hours with us. So like, that is the kind of show. It was a ball busty show. What's interesting about it in comparison to the other shows I mentioned is if you go back and listen to a lot of these segments, it holds up much better. Even the podcast that we'll talk about was in 2005, and it does not feel like 20 years ago. The audio quality is good, and they don't really ever talk about current events. It's a lot about their lives, or particularly Karl's life, and goofing on Karl. And that's a lot of the stories that come out of it. So it is evergreen and holds up very well. And again, similar to those shows, there's a ton of compilation. I found while I was looking for a lot of these clips, I found dozens of compilations, and so like sleep streams that are hours and hours long. Steven and Karl fighting, or just Karl's thoughts on the economy. Like, there's hours long compilations if you want to find, get your Karl Pilkington fix.
Next, we have the Ricky Gervais show.
Yeah, so the podcast was a different thing. And in 2005, Ricky does not get nearly enough credit for being the pioneer of podcasting. This is before Rogan and Marin and Adam Carolla and all of them. This podcast ended up getting hundreds of millions of downloads and was a huge success. And like I said, what's crazy about it is sounds good, holds up decades later. It really was interesting that in 2005, they were able to pull this off in a way where I even think the way they were uploading them, I think it was, I saw somewhere that it was under the section of like audiobooks, because they didn't really know how to define it yet. Like, because the term podcast just comes from these things that you're on your iPod, like no one really had a term for it. So Ricky was podcasting when it didn't even really have a name yet. And the reason I find that so interesting is, like I said, it holds up with any podcast that you listen to now that is three guys sitting around busting balls. They were doing it 20 years ago.
If you knew with certainty that today was the end of the world, how would you spend that final day? So, for instance, I've always wanted to smash up a bar. Do you know what I mean? It's strange, but I've always wanted the exhilaration of just smashing all those bottles, like you see in a film.
But would you enjoy it as much knowing that you're going to die in 8 hours?
I don't know. I suppose it's the sense of abandon. I mean, maybe I'd murder a person.
Wow.
Just see, I don't know, but I think I'd probably go mental.
Because
I've always been a very reserved person. I've never got into a fight, never caused a rumpus.
Yeah, but that's a worrying thought, because we don't have to have the end of the world for it to be the end of your world, because a lot of people know that they're terminally ill, so they don't go around smashing up bars and killing people.
But I suppose I know there'll be no repercussions ultimately, because the next day everyone's gone, so there's not going to be mourning families.
But then how dare you deprive that person of his last 8 hours or 10 hours of life?
I don't care, because it's the last day on Earth.
What would you do?
I've always wanted to kick a duck up the arse.
What makes it and what attracted an audience is you can tell how much Ricky like genuinely, that's not fake, you know?
Right.
Like you can tell how much they genuinely love his blunt and bizarre answers. And it does feel like friends. Hey, it feels like you're just in the room with these guys being funny. Like they were very good at having that come across. And a lot of people would call this I've seen where people are like, oh, was Karl bullied, or Ricky was an asshole to him, or Ricky was taking advantage of him. I don't see it that way at all, because Karl kind of had the same thought about Ricky as Ricky did of him. Like, what's interesting about Karl is he looked at Ricky as an asshole. You know, he was not the guy that admired Ricky Gervais and was just a coattail rider or eager to get on the air or any of that. He was like, Ricky's a fucking dickhead. I don't get why he finds me so funny. You know, that's very unique in terms of these oddball characters. Like usually it's people either that want attention or are too dumb to know they're being taken advantage of, or you know, just want to be part of the radio show, and they end up being the punching bag. That's how I would qualify someone like E-Rock. Where E-Rock was the punching bag on the Opie and Anthony show. I don't think he was a particularly dumb guy. He was just good at taking a beating, you know, and didn't push back to the point of pissing off the host or anything like that. He was just good at that. But what I've never seen is a guy who's there begrudgingly with kind of like contempt for the hosts. Like ultimately he likes them, but not really. It's so fascinating to watch Karl, because I think he's a wholly unique entity in podcasting and radio. There's no one that I can completely compare him to.
Next, we have him describing Ricky Gervais.
Yeah, so this goes to what I was saying, where he doesn't look at Ricky as the genius that he probably deserves to be. If you look at Ricky in all the shows he created, not just The Office, but like Afterlife is it's a show with like a lot of heart, and like it'll depress you and make you cry. Like Ricky has a variety of different projects that have been fantastic over the years, and Karl just sees him as the guy he's about to describe.
I'm walking down this little alleyway to his office, and I hear, "Stop! This is the round head police. Your head is too round." Right? And this is like this really loud to the point of I was like, "How's he managed that?" And he'd fold up a piece of card and made like a megaphone. And people were coming out of offices and stuff, and road workers were stopping the work going, like, what's that? And that's all he wanted me around for. When I got in, I said, what are we doing? He said, no, just wanted to do that. So that's, you know.
He's just kind of he's like a playful guy, isn't he?
Yeah, it sounds like it.
I don't know. Because it's him, people go, he's a laugh, isn't he? But if he was just a bloke who was a plumber, you go, he's annoying. I think that's the thing. He gets away with it.
It's such a funny way to look at a guy who's done so much for you. Like he made Karl Pilkington into a phenomenon, and Karl looks at it as like, if he was a plumber, he'd just be some asshole, you know.
I love that.
There was another clip where he says something like, they ask him what he thinks of Ricky Gervais, and he says, well, he's kind of like an iron lung. Like in a way, like I need him, but I wish I didn't. It's again so fascinating and blunt, and also that is not, when he says stuff like that about Ricky, it's not out of resentment or hostility. They didn't have a bad breakup, it doesn't seem, at least. There's not this like, oh fuck, he's bitter now years later. That's kind of always how they talked about each other. It's this beautiful, odd friendship, I guess, is ultimately what you would call it. It seems like they are friends in a way. I don't know if that's the exact right term.
Friendly.
But a creative working relationship, whatever it is. You know, Karl in a lot of ways was Ricky's muse. So maybe that's how you could look at it.
Next we have self-promotion.
He hates it. So they're going out and doing. Oh, so by the way, I should mention the clip of the Ricky Gervais show that we use. The reason it's a cartoon, if you're not aware, this is how I discovered the Ricky Gervais show. Was Ricky sold it as a TV show to HBO, where obviously it was a podcast, so it was an audio form. They animated all the stories that they told and presented it as a TV show on HBO. And I remember watching it on demand when I was in high school, I think, when that show came out, which was a really interesting way to do that. Like, and very smart, by the way, where you have all these stories that you could tell. A guy named Coke Logic would do it on YouTube with Opie and Anthony clips. So I'm surprised more. I'm surprised that was never done with like the Howard Stern. Well, now I'm not. I know he's never going to sell it for that purpose now. But I'm surprised more stuff wasn't done like that with Howard Stern or any of these radio shows that people, idolize and look back on, where you can kind of repackage them and present them with this visual element. So it was a show on HBO, and they also there's a show called Idiot Abroad that Karl was a part of that we will talk about in a moment. But they would have to go out and promote these projects, the three of them, and Karl could not wrap his head around why he had to do it. He was miserable during it.
205 million downloads so far, and now it's being made into animation with HBO, probably the greatest channel in the world, and Channel 4.
Also a channel.
Yeah.
So, Karl, a little bit of decorum. Yeah? Excited to be here?
Yeah, it's just we're doing a full day of this, and it just gets a little bit wearing.
Well, hang on, but this is
You don't say that, because they want
No,
to
but
think
it's
that
better to tell them why.
This is an exclusive.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's everywhere. People get sick of hearing about it. That's what happens, isn't it?
Mm.
I mean, you crop up everywhere every time something comes out. It's like, oh, what's he flogging now? That's the problem.
And that's
People
a friend.
are just going,
That's
I know,
a friend.
But that's how it comes across, isn't it? It's like, here we go again, flogging something.
Okay.
As far as I'm concerned, our bit of work's been done here.
Right.
I don't know why we have to sit and explain to people.
So you just like people to just buy our products, no questions asked, just buy it, give us the money.
If you want, but what I'm saying is the people who've made the DVD, when do they get involved? When do they get off their arse and do something for us? Instead of us sat here having to flog it. It comes across cheap.
So basically, Ricky Gervais is to blame for cartoon podcasters.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, unfortunately. But so there's real like beauty in that, what Karl is saying, and I think that's why he's been revered as this cultish figure and this genius that people have talked about him over the years, because there's a pureness to him that is completely lost in comedy. Now, Stephen goes on to make the point after this. He's like, people watching this interview don't want to hear about the show from a salesperson or the tech guy that put the DVD together. They want to hear from us. Like, they're interested in us, so they want to hear us describe it, not some asshole executive. Which
you can't imagine like an audio engineer being like, "You guys are gonna love this."
Which Stephen's point makes total sense. But I think the reason people admire Karl so much is he's similar to like the guys we love, like Norm Macdonald or Patrice, where it's like, why do I have to do this bullshit? And if Karl is playing a character, he never once dropped it ever. There's not a clip of him where it's like, oh, that's the real guy shining through. Like, if it's a character, he pulled it off flawlessly because it's him in every clip, and it seems very real and very genuine. And so I think people connect with him, especially now in a time where you see these comedians going to Riyadh and just backing out of anything they ever believed in. Like, Karl is a guy that stayed true to that, where he would try and do other shit. He had scripted shows and his own shows that he would try and get done, but he was purely this guy who's kind of like, this is cool, I get, but I don't like most of it. I don't like what I have to do to get it. And he was just, purely honest about that with the audience and with Ricky and Steven and everyone else.
Next we have other jobs.
So this is where you hear what kind of where Karl came from. He's a guy that dropped out of school, I think when he was like 15 or something. So very young, and this is the background that he has.
So you want people to see this? Aren't you proud of it?
It's not the best thing I've ever done.
What's the best thing you've ever done? Your fucking paper round. Because that's the only two things you've done so far in life. You had a paper round, then you had this, then you met us.
I just feel like...
Is there a DVD of the paper round coming out soon?
Yeah, I'd like to see that. He reckons that's the best job he's ever had. He said, I was my own boss. No, you weren't.
No, but it's the best job that I did as well. I felt confident in it. If people said, what do you do? And I do a paper round, I reckon all my customers would have been like, it's bloody good as well. Always the right paper, didn't rip it in a letterbox.
Yeah.
I was good at it. This shouldn't have happened. This is all an accident. You said, HBO are animating it. I said, great. How much? And you go, oh, well, don't worry about that. I still don't know to this day what I'm meant to be getting out of it. The drawing, all I heard you say to him is make his head rounder. I've had no input into it at all. It's just
like that. There's true beauty in what he's saying, where he's like, I assume Paper Round is like a paper boy.
I think so.
Yeah, that's just from context. That's what I'm guessing it is. Again, UK listeners, tell me if I'm correct. But like, there's beauty in him being like, well, I mean, like I was better at that. I knew I was doing a good job at that. That's beautiful. That's poetry, really. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like that's the shit in song lyrics where you're like, this guy's a genius. And he's kind of being laughed at for being an idiot for not being more appreciative. Now, what is interesting is he talks a lot about money. And this is the disconnect where people are like, oh, he was taken advantage of or whatever. We'll get into clips about money, and like he always felt he should have been paid more, and he didn't understand why like an idiot abroad, he would have to go out and do things where Steven and Ricky made money just for, sitting back and coming up with ideas. The one thing he didn't really understand was that they were not three equal parts of this. While Karl might be the star of the show, really, in that him talking made for a lot of the best bits. Like his stories or his answers to questions, like that is the takeaway from this show. You're not going to go find clips of just a Ricky and Steven day on the Ricky Gervais show. Like everyone is there for the absurdity of Karl Pilkington. But what he doesn't understand, what a lot of like whack pack type of guys don't understand, is those hosts are necessary. Like you need, like Ricky and Steven realizing what is great about Karl is the necessary function of what made that show interesting.
It
like
fools him.
Exactly. Like that you need those two to bring that out of Karl Pilkington. Otherwise, he's just a guy running the board that no one noticed before they got there. You know what I mean? Like that's the guy he is, who will make Gail Porter leave the studio crying, but no one thinks to say, well, what was that? What makes him unique that got that out of her,
Next, we have The Invention of Lying.
So The Invention of Lying is a movie that I liked, starring Ricky Gervais. And this is what I'm talking about, where he almost became like kind of resentful of Ricky and Steven's success. Not that he wanted their success, but he didn't understand why he wasn't being paid as much as them. So in The Invention of Lying, Ricky thought of a cameo for Karl. He was going to play a caveman or something. The scene ended up getting cut from the final cut of the film, and Karl was very annoyed by the process of acting. Most people would be like, oh my God, he put me in his movie. Karl had the opposite reaction.
Today, you got home and then came out to visit me in Boston on the set of my film I was doing. How was that?
Well, I didn't want to do it, did I? He called up and said, do you want to come out? And
do a favour for me. Ricky said, can you do a favour for me? You thought no.
Well, no, I didn't just go no. I sort of said, what is it? And he said, oh, well, you can just have a part. And he's like, what's the point though? I'm not an actor. I can't act. What's the point? It's a long way to go. So anyway, he said, all right, don't bother. And a week later, calls back and he says, bring Suzanne with you if you want. Oh, holiday. So I thought, yeah, I could treat Suzanne to that.
I thought a little part for him. They'd probably pay 2 flights.
Yeah.
She's coming out. I thought share it with friends. I was
a generous guy.
Yeah, so I thought, oh, she'll love that. That'll get me in the good book. So I said, listen, we're going to Boston. She goes, right. Anyway, Ricky books the tickets and that. She can't get time off because we'd just been in Menorca. So they said, hang on, you've just had a week off. You can't go anywhere. So I had to go on my own, right? Which, fair enough. I'd said I'd go by that point. It'd all been booked. The costume that I needed for the film bit had been made. I couldn't get out of it. I was in too deep. Anyway, go there. Boston isn't worth seeing. I mean, you're talking about traveling the world and, opening your eyes and seeing new things. There's nothing to see in Boston. It's Dunkin' Donuts and Starbucks. There's nothing else, is there? I'm not being unfair there. I mean, it looks nice. There's nice buildings.
You mean there's not a museum of the weird?
There's they had something to do with tea bags, didn't they? That
No, it's the Boston Tea Party. It wasn't nothing to do with tea bags. It was the Boston Tea Party. That one of the founding events of America.
So, like, again, a very simple way. Most people would look at that and be like, "Oh my God, Ricky flew me across the world, put me in his movie." Like, that movie did not need Karl Pilkington. It was a favor to Karl, at least in Ricky's mind. I mean, to be fair, there's a lot of the stuff that Ricky does that he does know will annoy Karl, as we'll see with Idiot Abroad.
That's nice.
So there is an element of that where it's like, you know, he's fucking with him, but that is what guys do. That's a lot of male relationships, is like, you would look at it from afar and be like, do you hate this guy? And it's like, oh no, it's one of my best buddies, you know? So Karl looks at this and says, like, instead of being appreciative, like, oh my God, he put me in his movie. I'm not an actor. Why would he put me in his movie? What a favor he's doing. Karl looks at it and says, like, hey, Jennifer Garner and Louis C.K. are getting paid a lot more than I am for this movie. What the fuck? You know? He kind of thinks it's bullshit that he had to do all that work for very, very little pay, you know, in comparison to a lot of the other people in that film. And again, it's just that pureness. I don't know that it's the right way to look at the world, but there is like a beauty in it. You would, at least I admire the way he looks. I wish everyone could think like that. I just don't know that I don't know it would all function correctly.
It is a great attitude to have for radio.
Yes. Oh, for sure. Yeah.
Not necessarily like showbiz, but
right.
Radio.
Right.
Next, we have Idiot Abroad.
Yeah. So Idiot Abroad is basically exactly what I described, where they would bring, like season 1, they bring Karl to the 7 wonders of the world. And the genius of that, and this is why you need Ricky and Steven, because if left to Karl, it would be like, let me just go where I want to go on vacation, you know, like maybe the same place my family went when I was 11 or something like that. What Ricky and Steven saw is like, if we bring him to the most spectacular places, this guy is going to have such the opposite reaction of any other human being. Like, he will be completely unmystified and have such a unique take on it. And so that's why you do need Ricky and Steven to kind of filter these ideas. But Karl bitched about it the entire time. There was never a moment of, oh, it's really cool, I get to see all these places. He hated doing it, which is really interesting.
Were they talking to the boys anyway?
I mean, Steve was a big traveller. He thinks travelling the world is good for you. He thought it'd be good for me. He said, oh, you know, what about if we sent you around the world? And I think I said, yeah, it'll never happen. Yeah. Because there was loads of other like offers of stuff, and they were all rubbish things. Yeah. Something about a program about dangerous roads. That's what they wanted me to do. And I said, well, I don't understand the connection. I've never been run over. I don't understand why they picked me. And there was loads of things like that. I just thought, what's the point? And then Steve mentioned this idea, and I sort of said, whatever. And then I remember someone calling me from a production company. I was up a ladder putting a blind up for a mate.
Yeah.
And he called up and said, this program's happening. And I was like, right, what now then? And he said, oh, I'll be in touch. All right then. And that was that. So I was none the wiser, and I'd sort of agreed to it. And I thought it was going to be like a proper travel thing.
Yeah.
I thought, yeah, all right.
Like Michael Palin kind of.
That's what I set out to do. Honestly, on my mum's life, I thought it's sort of that sort of thing, but with a younger person slightly. And, you know, that's that. And then it sort of, as I did the first trip, I realised it was just a wind-up, really, with Ricky. Mainly Ricky annoying me.
What a surprise.
You know, putting me up in horrible places, having to do horrible stuff. It's not really about the wonders of the world. Yeah, it was. I mean, I tried to get out of it. I called up. I did like 3 calls saying, I don't want to do this anymore. I want to, you know, I said, send the contract on email. I want to see if I can get out of this. In India, I actually called up the director who was like in charge, but in London, saying they can have the money back. I said, I cannot do this.
It's what's interesting there is like, and this is where maybe Karl is a little dim or like doesn't fully process these stuff. He thought they were hiring him to be Anthony Bourdain. Like, hey, we're doing this travel show, and you're the only guy who can host it. You know what I mean? Like, why would you go to Karl Pilkington for that? You know? There's 10 million other guys who could host that show. But what Karl never quite got is like why his reactions make him beautiful. He looked at Ricky and Steven as kind of being the assholes, and he's like, and then I realized they were messing with me. Like they put me in these bad hotel rooms. Again, Karl's whole idea, which he got when he kind of did a show on his own, he's like, well, I don't get it. I'm the star of the show. Why can't I stay in a better hotel? It's like, well, that's the whole, we're going to film you how much you hate this bad hotel. But him never getting that is what made it. You can't, as much as you might want to get through to him and say, Karl, don't you appreciate what they're doing? No. He has to hate that hotel room and not understand why they would put the star of the show in this shithole, you know?
Next, we have season 2.
Yeah, so it gets a couple more seasons. Oh, the other thing I wanted to mention is that story usually goes when told in one of these, morning show type interviews, whatever. That show usually goes, oh, they pitched me all these horrible ideas, and I was like, I don't really want to do that, whatever. And then Stephen Merchant calls me with this idea, and I'm like, that's the one. Through Karl's mind, it was Stephen Merchant calls me with this idea, and I'm like, whatever. Fine, I'll do it.
Yeah, sure.
And so he was kind of just there. He's like, yeah, I guess. He would just go along, even though he didn't love him, he didn't like the idea. He would just keep going along with these ideas. And so it gets picked up for season 2 and season 3. They did like bucket list events. I forget what season 3, if there was a theme, but he was joined by Warwick Davis, who was in Ricky's show Life Too Short, and I believe some of his other projects as well. So he's joined by Warwick Davis. Now he has like a sidekick, and they thought that might spice up the show. And this is, again, Karl's lack of appreciation for this continuing.
I have to say, why are you doing this again, Karl? Why?
No, don't make it look.
No, one. Total honesty, money.
Yeah,
I've got to pay the bills.
Yeah.
And the second one is you.
Oh, thanks.
If you, I tried to get him not to do it.
He was trying to make it look like Warwick didn't want to do it, but I was talking to Warwick behind his back and what was going on, I'd love to do it.
But he hadn't done one. And I was thinking, you hear about all these things about these sort of programs where, they say you're staying in a tent, but you're staying in a Holiday Inn. No, Warwick, we don't. We're in the middle of nowhere. I don't want you sort of looking like I'm picking on him.
Did you warn him? Did you say, look?
I told him, I said, it's not good. I said, everybody goes, you must be so lucky seeing the world. But a lot of it's horrible. A lot of the world is horrible.
He thought me and Warwick were being naive. Right? But really, me and Warwick were going, no, we know what it's like, but we also know Warwick can cope with it. And he thought we were being stupid to go, no. Yeah, but when we first did it, he was saying things like...
films where you get, what's that word?
Pampered?
If you want.
What was the word were you thinking of?
Something about... No, I'm not even going to have a go at it.
Go on.
No, I can't remember. And that's the world you're used to.
Yeah.
Okay.
This isn't like that, is it?
Do you know what he said to me when he said, what's going to happen if he falls down a hole? Why would that come into your head? Why would he fall down a hole? Have you ever fallen down a hole?
Never fallen down.
Because he hasn't been to some of the places I've been to.
There's a lot of holes in the places you've been to, are there?
Yeah, the roads are bad.
So simple to look at like this is the little person and be like, well, what if he falls down a hole? It's such a completely simple way of looking at the world, but he's so firm in it. Like when he's called out, we're talking about a lot about the beauty of his brain function. When he's called out for it, he doesn't go, oh no, that's not what I meant, or like there's no backpedaling. He's like, well, what if he does fall into a hole? What happens then, Ricky? What do we do then?
And he's praying for it.
Well, he always looks at it like, Ricky, why don't you host the show? Like he never appreciated what people saw in him, which I think is exactly what people see in him, oddly. To take that from meta. Like he would look at it and be like, well, if you want this show done so bad, Ricky, you host it. What do you need me for? Like there was never a moment of, there must be something about me that people are appreciating. He's like, why are they dragging me into this again? It was always a hassle for him. That is similar to some of the whack pack types you talked about. Like I think of Eric the actor with the Howard Stern show, where it was always this kind of indignance of like, why don't you do more for me? And it's like, well, we've already done so much. It's like, yeah, have you though? And when someone is just unwavering in that, like if you look at someone and they're kind of a pussy about it, or they're a snake about it. It seems like they're two-faced. Then it's gross. But when someone like Eric the Midget or Karl comes around, and it's just there's no wavering. Like, that's who they are, and they don't give a fuck what you think about it. At least in retrospect. I'm sure at times there were people like, oh, this Karl guy's annoying. But like when you look back on it years later, you're like, it's kind of wonderful that he never backed down on anything he believed in.
Next, we have money.
This was a big thing. So this is where a lot of people look at it and say Ricky was like bad to Karl in some way. I think they take this clip a little out of context. So it starts, they call him and he's grouting tile, I think for something he's doing on his own house. And Ricky's like, what are you grouting for? What the hell are you doing? And Karl's like, well, some of us can't, like some of us live real lives. And he's giving Ricky shit. Some people look at that and say it's Ricky busting his balls for being poor or something. Again, I don't see it that way. I see Ricky saying, like, I've given you all these opportunities. Why are you laying your own fucking tiles? What are you doing? Hire someone, you know? Like, it seemed to me like friends ball busting, but people have interpreted it their various ways. But this is Ricky talking about it. So they just call him kind of off the, impromptu on this radio show that Ricky is on. And this is him talking about not getting paid for DVD sales of the Ricky Gervais show. And actually, I don't think it's the Ricky Gervais. I think it's Idiot Abroad at this point.
Nothing's happening, is it? Nothing's rolling in at the moment.
DVDs are.
Work is coming in.
Your DVD's at number 5 in the charts.
Yeah, but hey, Richard, you don't see that money for ages, mate. Honestly, nothing happens.
He's so annoyed. He was annoyed, right? We've just got an animation in America, Canada, Scandinavia, Australia, Channel 4, right? Being second series being made.
Yeah.
All those. Yeah. He's going. When are we getting paid? When are we getting paid? He thinks it's going to come every week in a little brown envelope with gum on it. No, it doesn't.
I don't know how long I'm going to be around for. And anything else, like you say, if I was a tiler, I'd do the tiling and then the person would pay me.
Right.
But in this line of work, everyone's always quite ready yet. The money's in a pot. Where's the pot? Where's the money? It just annoys me because someone could buy it who's signed this off.
Karl, that was a metaphor. There's no real pot. When they said, it's got to go in the pot, they meant all those DVDs, they go in there and they see what the profit is, and then we get a profit share. Most people don't get a profit share. You have walked into this job under the wing of me and Steve Merchant. You should be so lucky. You've had the easiest ride of anyone in entertainment ever in the history of the world.
Oh, it's not good, though. Everyone keeps going, oh, you must be a millionaire. No, I'm not, because the money's split. So many hands are out. Every job I do, Ricky and Steve weren't away with me when I was abroad, yet they get a big bib of it. They got their hand out. Their agents have got their hands out. I am not a millionaire, so let's get that out there. I'm skint at the moment. No money's coming in. I've just been on the phone then. The reason I didn't answer one of the 8 calls that I've just had is because I was on the phone to the electric people, giving them a meter reading. They all want paying on time. I can't just tell them, the money's in the pot. The tax man. The money's in the pot. You can have it when I get the pot. I don't know when I'm getting paid. That's how it works. I'm sick of it.
You can tell he's just so frustrated with having to deal with all this shit. And I think there's truth in both sides, where there's a lot of truth in what Ricky is saying, where me and Steven basically made you into this beloved figure. You haven't had to do anything for it, aside from show up and be yourself. And I think where people appreciate Karl's reaction is so many people just accept that. And it's like, hey, happy to be, I wouldn't be here without you guys. So whatever you want to do to me is fine. Kick me around, whatever. Karl was like, I didn't want to do it in the first place. When are you paying me? I don't want it to take a long time. You know what I mean? I don't want to wait for whatever Hollywood bullshit it has to filter through for me to get less than you two are making. Where's my fucking money? Come on.
It's like a whack packer plus what's his face from Windy City Heat.
Perry Caravello. Yeah. There's a little Perry Caravello in there too. That's a good call. Where like this feeling of I've earned this.
Yeah, and they just kind of prop him up to make fun of him.
Yeah, for sure. But in Karl's case, it's hard because like there is no show without him. Idiot Abroad, there's no show without him. I get that. That's also true in like Windy City Heat, where without like they are the star of these things. But again, without Ricky and Steven, none of it exists. It's never close to getting on TV. If you're just like, hey, I know kind of a weird guy That's not a show.
No.
You know? I know this kind of simple guy who has interesting reactions to things. That's not a TV show. You need Ricky and Steven to figure out the best way to,
Wait till you see this guy observe the pyramids. He's gonna hate it.
Right. Here's why you need Ricky and Steven. This is the best way to say it. You know how everyone thinks, oh my God, my office should be the TV show. I mean, are we wacky?
Right.
That's probably true if Ricky and Steven were there taking notes about what happened in the office. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You can't just have Bill from accounting tell you why it's funny. You kind of need these minds to make it presentable to a mass audience.
Next we have, I believe, the Moaning of Life.
Yes. So the Moaning of Life is essentially Karl got what he wanted, where after Idiot Abroad, there was this, not spin-off, but kind of sequel show, I guess, where Karl got exactly what he wanted. He would now go through life and he could stay in nice hotels, and Ricky and Steven were not involved in this show. I didn't know this existed until researching. It was on the same network, but I had never heard of it. And it was exactly what Steven wanted, where he's like, why do I have to go to all these places, these extravagant places, and stay in shitty hotel rooms and get a reaction? Why can't I kind of just do what I want? So this is him describing the Moaning of Life.
You, as always, this new series is a bit of a journey of self-discovery in a way, because each episode covers a big topic, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's the big things that happen in your life. It's the marriage idea, having kids, happiness, death. So they're all things that most people deal with at some point in their life.
So you go around the world to find the answer to these from different
I mean, I'll tell you now, there isn't any answers.
Right.
I'm more clueless now than I was at the beginning, because the world's pretty mad, isn't it? The way people do things and why they do things. And you ask people why they do them, and they go, I don't know, they just do. There's a lot of traditions, isn't there, that just keep things going. You think that's the reason for it. So yeah, the first one's on Sunday night at 9, and it's about marriage.
And
I love that, in the promo of it, he's like, well, there aren't any answers, so don't worry about it. Don't bother watching. But I checked out some, like, there are I think full episodes, but also clips on YouTube. And like the essence of Karl is still there, and you get a lot of his wisdom and his takes and his funny reactions. But there's something lost without him bitching about Ricky and his hijinks and all of that. So like, and the reason, I believe that the reason, like, we all know what Idiot Abroad is, and I never heard of this show till researching this topic, is the Ricky and Steven factor. Like, they are a unit. You need all three of them to make the magic that they created. And I brought up Opie and Anthony earlier. As much as people like shit on Opie now or whatever, I think you need all three of those guys, Opie, Anthony, and Jim Norton, to make the magic that we saw for all those years on the radio. And you can look at any of their individual shows. Opie has very little success. Jim Norton's doing great. Anthony seems to be doing well with his own thing, but none of them are the Opie and Anthony show. Like, left to their own devices, you're never going to recreate the thing with all three guys. And I think that's true with this trio as well.
Next, we have Learning English.
So I didn't know. This is another one I didn't know about. I just wanted to include a clip. I was confused what this was when I found it. Apparently, Ricky and Karl rather did another podcast in like 2012 that was very popular that I had never heard about. But it's called Learning English, and the idea of it is it's presented as this thing for foreigners or people that speak a different language to learn English. What it essentially was Ricky winding up Karl in classic fashion.
This is my friend, Karl Pilkington. He is bold. He is bold. He has no hair. Karl Pilkington has no hair.
Yeah, I know. They can see I've got no hair.
No, I know.
Well, what do they need to know that for? If they learn a language, bald isn't a bald head isn't that important. Teach them how to ask for bread or milk.
We'll get to that, but this is about sort of friendship and family, So it's all useful. There's so many words, you know, they might as well start somewhere.
There's too many words. A lot of words. Lot of words.
So you say it. Karl Pilkington is bold. Karl Pilkington has got a head like a fucking orange.
Right, I really don't know why they need to learn this.
Because they might need to say that one day.
No, but I get enough abuse now from English people. I don't want Chinese suddenly turning up going, about fucking orange. Teach them how to say milk. I need milk. Milk for tea. Coffee. Teach me useful stuff.
It frustrates him so much. He never, if he ever understood the bit, he never let you in on the fact that he knew it. Like maybe there's a Ron and Fez thing happening where years later I'll find out that Karl was always in on it. But it really does not seem like, while he did act, I was going to say he's not an actor. He did act in Derek. And then after the Moaning of Life, he was in a scripted like sitcom. Like I think without Ricky and Steve, like just on his own, he was in another scripted show. So he's done some acting, but it truly seems like he is not in on the joke. He's just frustrated with like, why are you teaching them to insult me? They don't know who I am. Teach them to ask for food. They're probably hungry. So that was another thing that they did. They did these on top of the podcast. They did like these interviews for the DVDs. Like the Ricky's stand-up special would include these DVD extras where it's Ricky interviewing Karl, and this was always their dynamic where Ricky would wind him up and Karl would just get annoyed with him. But there's also there's he's got this like Yogi Berra type quality. You know, I don't know how many are actual Yogi Berra quotes, but you know that like it gets laid early out here and all those quotes that are attributed to Yogi Berra.
Yeah.
The beauty of those quotes is like they seem idiotic, but then you're like, it's so true also. Like you can use them for life. That's why they've stuck around so long. Karl has a lot of those, like just his reaction there where he's like, there are too many words. And it's like, man, that's so true. You know, like
really are.
It's a dumb point in a way, but it's also like, yeah, why do we have so many fucking words to say the same things, you know?
No, they need to learn milk and bread.
This is also, it's a great, I've mentioned before that I fall asleep to a lot of, old radio shows and stuff like that. Karl Pilkington is a great one because it's such gentle tones, you know? Unfortunately, you have Ricky scream laughing every once in a while, but
can't blame him though.
Yeah, right. If you're just listening to Karl talk, it's very soothing to listen to him speak.
Next, we have relationships.
Again, more of his philosophies. Again, this is where people have started over the years to call him brilliant. I don't think he's brilliant. I kind of understand Ricky's take on him more, but there's brilliance somewhere in there.
I remember when I went away with Warwick Davis, did some traveling with him. And then when I got back, Ricky was saying, we're all there. And then Warwick wanted to meet up again after it all. And I was like, we don't have to. We've had a good time.
What, to carry on the relationship?
Yeah, and I was like, we've done it. We've been through some good experiences, bad experiences.
Let's leave it there.
Let's leave it because, and there's something in that. I kind of wonder what the world would be like if you didn't have friends who you saw every week, because I wonder, you get into this rut and you're talking about the same shit and it's like, yeah, you've told me. Whereas if you meet different people and you're getting different stories and people telling you different ways of looking at things, I wonder if you'd change as a person more.
Again, not necessarily not realistic. Like the idea that you're just going to cut everyone out of your life every 7 years or whatever the time frame is. Not a realistic thing, but like just to think about things that way is so interesting and unique.
Well, you think it's unique to think of people like taste buds?
Yeah, you shed your skin every few years. But like that, I don't think that Karl is necessarily a genius, but he does make you think about things deeper than you otherwise would have. Does that make sense?
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Next, we have evolution.
Okay. Oh, I forget if this is about their relationship or his take on evolution, but either way, I'm intrigued.
And it's weird how like people listen to the old podcast that I used to do, or with Ricky and Steve, or Idiot Abroad and all that. And here's me trying to do something different, but people are like, I prefer that. Do more of that. And it's like, I'm not that.
And also, I'm not doing it with all due respect, I'm not doing it for you.
I know, but you can't say that.
Of course you can't. I know that. But in a way, if you look at everything from, because you used to do milk round. Did you do milk round?
Paper round.
Look at the paper round, right through to all the radio stuff, then the podcast stuff.
I know.
Then the travelling.
Loads of stuff.
But it's
a
all
mix. And it's spaced.
It's all different. So there's been a constant search.
Yeah, and different ages. Things. But people don't want you to. It's like they look at me like I'm Homer Simpson or something. That it's this thing that doesn't age. Do you know what I mean?
So stay in that box.
If Homer was real, he'd probably be all right by now. Do you know what I mean? The kids will have grown up. He'd have a different life with Marge. His brain would have changed. He changes as a person, but he doesn't change in the Springfield world because he's a cartoon. Yeah. And I think people look at me like that. It's like, do more of that. It's like, well, I couldn't even if I wanted to. I'm not that person because it's 20 years old, some of that stuff, or 10 years old. And I don't know what you were like 10 years ago, but I hope you've changed a bit because you do, don't you?
To be fair, he was a cartoon.
That's true. He was a cartoon character. You're right. But like, there's part of you that wants to go, oh, that's a stupid thought. Homer Simpson was a written character, but you totally get what he's saying.
Yeah.
Like, again, he's filtering it through this kind of simplistic way of looking at it, but you're like, oh, he's right. Like, I wish we could all think like that. And that's the genius. And it's why Karl has become this cult figure. And, he's also right in that he is representing there what we want all of our artists to be. Like when guys don't make, like Bo Burnham, I'm a huge fan of, I mentioned many times. And I'm like, I wish he would just make more stuff. Like he hasn't put a special out in 5 years. And prior to that, it was 5 years before that. So I'm like, I wish he would just, do more, make more, and be out there more. But then he would not be the guy that I want to hear from so much more.
Right.
Then he would just be a guy where we probably know all his political thoughts, and you're like, I wish Bo Burnham would just fucking go away. He's annoying.
Next thing you know, he's at Saudi Arabia.
Yeah, you're like, gee, I thought he represented something. Yeah, so it's like there is a problem, especially now with social media, with overexposure. And I think we look at guys like Karl, where you're like, you almost lust after more content from them, but also you don't want it, because if he gave us more, he wouldn't be this guy. He wouldn't be this mysterious. There would be no mystery around him.
Right.
I think the one person who kind of goes against what I'm saying is Norm, where there was this complete mystery around what Norm was really like. And just search Norm Macdonald into YouTube. Hundreds of hours of him on every fucking radio show and podcast and TV shows. Like, he was out there all the time, yet there is this odd mystery around him. So he's the one guy that it completely flies in the face of what I'm saying. But there is, like, I think the reason Karl has this cult following of people that want to hear more from him is that exact attitude of him, not giving a fuck. Like, just not having any interest in being part of showbiz, really, and not caring about, like, fame or what people think of him, or Ricky respecting him or any of that stuff. He does not give a fuck, and that's a kind of an admirable quality that we look for more in entertainers because it is so rare, I think.
We are at our last clip, and that's the possibility of a reunion.
And this is another one where he looks at it perfectly. And what separates him from the people we've compared him to, whack packers, is those people have nothing else going on. And so they lust after more. They're like, well, please have me back on the show. Or they, revert to criticizing the person. Go, that guy was a fucking asshole, because that'll get him attention with this new audience that hates that show or whatever. Karl is totally different in that he did have real resentment while it was going on. He had actual resentment that built up over the years, but now doesn't seem to resent them at all. Has mostly positive things to say about them. It seems like they've all kept in touch over the years. In that interview we played of Stephen Merchant, they said, "Do you see Karl anymore?" He goes, "I just got lunch with him the other day." So it seems like they do all keep in touch and they're friendly with each other. But Karl has such the perfect way of looking at it where he's like, why would we keep going? We did it already.
Now, look, what about Ricky Gervais? This is a quote, if people don't know it. He said, this is Ricky Gervais saying this, not me. Received wisdom says there's a fine line between a genius and an idiot. Not true. Carol's an idiot, plain and simple, very simple. Some people have proclaimed him a genius, but they're idiots. Now, Ricky,
Real quick. So there's a couple things there. First of all, I think this lady saying it is not the tone of Ricky Gervais. You know?
Right.
Like, that sounds like a quote from someone who's now feuding with Karl Pilkington. It's not that. I think he's right. The idea, Karl Pilkington is not a genius, you know? Like, he's not, like I said, he needs those other guys to be what he is. I don't think he's a creative genius. I do think there's genius in there, and I understand why people have anointed him a genius online. Like, I get where that comes from, where he himself is not a genius, but he is able to, I don't know, lead other people to genius. Does that make sense?
He's a perfect ingredient to get genius.
Yeah, he's a genius Sherpa in some odd way.
I think the genius Sherpa would be Gervais, but he knows exactly how to get the best out of him.
Yeah, exactly. But like ultimately, like I said, it comes across nastier with this lady reading it. But I think that's something you would hear Ricky say in a million interviews where he's like, this guy's not a fucking genius. What are you, crazy?
would you get back together again, like a sort of boy band? You know, the way that they do.
Yeah, but is that a good? Is a boy band getting back together a good idea?
Well,
ever?
take that was a good idea, don't you think? Take that, maybe. No, okay, we're going to fight.
I just think you've got to like leave things.
Right.
They were good.
They had their time.
People liked them at the time.
Okay.
You bring them back, it's never as good.
Right.
I think people like the idea of going back to something they liked when they were younger.
Sure.
I mean, we stopped doing the podcasts about, well, Idiot Abroad was 10 years ago.
Was it really?
10 years ago.
Wow.
And people are still going on about it.
I know, but that's because people loved it.
Yeah, but I wonder if it came back now, if people wouldn't like it, because, you know, things have changed, haven't they, with like sensibilities and that.
No, that's true. Oh,
probably
gosh.
offend everyone.
There you are.
I mean, yeah, does anyone want to see that again?
And he's right. There's almost nothing we clamor for where it's like, I'd like them to get back together and do this. You know, like Community is a show that I liked, that there was always talk of them making a movie, and I think they still might. And I remember I used to think the first 3 seasons of that show are amazing. And I used to think, oh, if they got them all back together to do that, how amazing would that be? And ultimately, the answer is usually not that great. Because all those people, Arrested Development, you know, a perfect example is Arrested Development. Forever, people were like, we need more. That show was canceled too early. We need more of it. And then they brought it back, and all those people had other stuff going on, so they had to shoot it weird and out of order because they couldn't all be in the same place. Mitch Hurwitz, the writer and creator, wasn't in the same headspace that he was 10 years or however long it was earlier. So you're just never going to get the same thing, especially when it's a creative project where people are in a certain frame of mind at that exact time and they know exactly what they're going for. When you bring it back 10 years later, you're now saying, okay, how do we recapture that? Instead of how do we build this thing that's already in the works? How do we keep that going? What's the next step of that? Now you're thinking totally differently and thinking, how do we recreate what we already did? It's the wrong headspace to be in.
Right.
The reason I find that so fascinating is because we mentioned the word genius, and creative geniuses think like that. Like Seinfeld, as much as I criticize Seinfeld, he said, hey, the show's done. You know what I mean? Like they offered him, I want to say the number was $5 million an episode or something crazy. I'm pretty sure, I hope I'm not exaggerating. I'm pretty sure they offered him like $5 million an episode. And he said, we're done. We've done what else can we do? Larry David's gone, so it's not going to be as good. You know, like, we're done. And it takes like that level of person to walk away from something like that. someone that's already been successful and has other things going on, or Karl Pilkington, a guy who's doing his own grout for his tiles, you know? That's why people look at Karl as he doesn't have the fortune that a lot of these other people have. He lives a regular life. Again, there's a lot of mystery around it. He has a partner named Suzanne that he mentions, but like no one knows who she is or what she looks like. No one really knows what his living situation is. It seems like he made good money. He retired and paid off his house, so it seems like he made enough to live. We don't know how much that is or if that's even true. There's mystery around him, and yet he says, like, no, we're done. I did that shit with Ricky and Steven. It was a great time. We're done. And that's where no one on his level, that's never the case. These people are always clamoring to get back in and relive the glory days and all of that. And Karl Pilkington is, as far as I can think of, solely unique in that. I can't think of anyone who compares to him. So is Karl Pilkington a genius? Ultimately, our answer is mixed. No, not in the traditional way we think of it. But I do believe there's levels of genius in there, or if the word isn't genius, we'll have to come up with our own. But there's something incredibly unique about this guy that you just want to hear more from him. So hopefully this show is, as I always say, this show is one of two things for people. Either walk down memory lane where you can go, oh, I remember that Karl Pilkington bit or whatever, or maybe you've just discovered Karl Pilkington, like Craig. When we started, before we started this, Craig goes, "Who is this guy?"
Also my words.
And so I think maybe there's a lot of other people like that. So hopefully you do a deep dive into Karl Pilkington. Like I said, ton of compilations on YouTube. So go through them and see if anything interests you. There's also a good documentary. It's in a couple parts about the relationship between Ricky, Steven, and Karl on YouTube. That kind of talks about the dynamics of their relationship and their separation and everything that I thought was pretty good. So if you're interested in learning more, go check those out. And we appreciate you guys being here every week for Why You Laughing, or just the subjects that interest you. And go back through the archives. Check out all the subjects. Make sure you haven't missed any episodes that you're interested in. And blindmike.net is the easiest way to find those links. We're on YouTube, Spotify, wherever else you get podcasts. So check us out there. Subscribe, like, comment. It helps more people find the show. We appreciate you guys doing that. And become a member if you're interested in early access to these episodes, as well as bonus content. And go to verygoodshow.org.
At your own peril.
Yes. Caution. Warning. These boys are bad. Is there a big skull and crossbones when people go there?
Honestly, I don't know what happens when you go there right now.
Well, you guys find out for yourselves.
Yeah.
And we appreciate you guys supporting the show. Thank you very much for listening and watching. And we will talk to you next time on Why Are You Laughing?
Zip it up and zip it out.